wonder if I can do this with my glasses on and not just have the light bouncing off them, looking really terrible. Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabrielle, and if you're new here, I do Jewish mommy and lifestyle videos. Today, because I've been doing a lot of videos about mommy side of things, I haven't been doing a lot of videos about the Jewish side of things, so I thought that I would change things up. I still plan on doing a video about camping with baby, but I'm going to do a video today about my head covering story and a little bit about Jewish head covering and like what we call it, where it comes from, that kind of stuff. So Jewish head covering is considered a requirement by the Orthodox movement. The conservative and reform movements are obviously much more liberal, and they'll say that it's more of just a tradition or it's just a personal preference. One of the reasons, though, that a lot of people don't realize that hair covering is a requirement in Judaism is that in Judaism, women are allowed to wear a wig to cover their hair instead of just covering it with a scarf or a hat. Now, the use of a wig is somewhat controversial. In my personal tradition, which is the Sephardi tradition, we are actually not allowed to cover with a wig. And I will sometimes cover with a wig, but only if it's something that's quite obviously a wig. I don't cover with something that looks like my natural hair. I don't cover with something that is meant to be like super expensive and, you know, meant to deceive people into thinking that it's my actual hair. And I really will only wear wigs either if it's just a super special occasion or if it's something, you know, very fun. I have a video previously where I was wearing one of my favorite wigs, which is a blue and pink wig. It's been in the closet for forever because I need to like brush it really, really badly, but I might do a video with that on again sometime just for funsies. I feel like I never really get a chance to like dress up though. It's just so much work with the baby, really. In Judaism, we typically call the scarf a tichel, which is a Yiddish word, and it just means a small cloth, like a handkerchief. Or we say mitpachat, which is the Hebrew word for scarf. Effectively, it's just called a scarf, though, depending on whatever kind of language. I'm spending this entire time looking at myself and not the camera. The idea of modest dress is called sniut or snius, depending on your pronunciation. And that is literally just the word for modesty. As far as I'm aware, it's just the word for modesty in Hebrew. This also includes things like covering the collarbone to certain extents. You know, you'll notice sometimes I don't cover quite up to the collarbone. I'm kind of more of a, like, as long as it covers up the cleavage, but typically it's between like the cleavage and the collarbone, covering between the upper elbow to the lower elbow, somewhere in that range, again, depending on your strictness, and then covering either right above or right below the knees, depending on your strictness. As well as, you know, not wearing clothing that is suggestive, not wearing clothing that's too tight, stuff like that, pretty standard. One of the main differences, though, for head covering for Jewish women is that we're not required to do it until we get married. So I found a questionnaire with some questions on it, some commonly asked questions regarding head covering, so I'm going to go ahead and read off of that. I was previously in a panel, actually, at my work at the junior college, where we had myself, some Christian women, and some Muslim women who were all talking about head covering and sort of comparing it and all that kind of stuff. And if I can find where it was recorded, then I will absolutely link it in the description below. But as of yet, I haven't really heard anything about it being posted. I know it was recorded, I just don't know if anybody ever posted it on YouTube or anything like that. So hopefully I'll be able to find it one day because it was a pretty fun experience. I'll also link some information about Jewish head covering in the description below just for people to know more, but I don't necessarily want to get too much into like the law and the halacha of it because I'm not an expert and I'd really just be reading off of other people's excellent work. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that up to people who know far more about it than I do. So moving right along. When did you start covering your hair? So I started covering my hair fully the day after I got married, literally the day after I got married. I have a really cute picture that I will try to post that I'll try to put up in the video somewhere in here. literally the day after my wedding. We're off on our honeymoon. I'm in a van with like a whole bunch of other people, and I'm wearing one of my favorite scarves for the first time for the first time as a married woman. I kind of played around with it a little bit before, but it was the first time that I was like officially wearing it, and it was a really exciting moment for me. I had been previously partially covering, and I had previously sort of played around with cover. I wasn't raised in an observantly Jewish household, so I actually didn't know anything about Jewish hair covering until I went to university, but I had the urge to start covering when I was in junior college. I remember just really having this feeling of how I felt that seeing a woman, like when you see a woman and she's got her hair covered, you know that she's a pious woman, you know that she's doing it for religious purposes, and I really loved that sort of image that it produced. So I really wanted to do something with that kind of level of devotion, and the only thing I could think of was to wear something on my head, not just similar to the hijab, but also to the yarmulke, the kufi, the bonnet, the little doilies that some of the apostolic women wear. So I was trying to think of a way to do it myself that I could sort of just do it for my own purposes, and it basically turned into I was just wearing a bandana, sort of like a kerchief every day, and I did that for maybe a month, but I didn't really feel like I had a context for doing it, so I sort of abandoned it because I didn't feel like I could really kind of back it up with like, oh, I do this for this reason. It kind of felt like a really shallow reason of like, I just do it because I feel like I should. And I didn't really have a conviction to sort of stand behind. I felt very lost about it. So I decided not to do it after about a month and just kind of like put it on the back burner. Then when I went to university and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, all the rabbis' wives are wearing like coverings on their head. What's going on? And it was explained to me this is something that married women do. I was really excited, but I wasn't married, so I really felt like it would be inappropriate for me to wear a head covering that sort of says like, oh, I'm married, but I'm not married. It's deceptive in that manner, as well as the fact that there's an idea that a married woman shouldn't cover her head because it diminishes the importance of it when she does get married, because then it's sort of like, oh, well, I've already been doing this thing, and it sort of makes it not as special. So I made the commitment not to cover fully until I was married. So for many, many years, I just sort of, longed for the day when I could cover, and it was something that I might do like in private and I would play around with, or, occasionally if I was going out and I was just on my own, or, something like that. It just wasn't something that I was doing sort of like out of a sense of devotion. It was something I was doing like sort of, in excitement and in preparation, sort of like a little kid, getting dressed up, but, something that I didn't really feel I was allowed to have a commitment to until until after I graduated and, sort of went off on my own. And I was having a conversation actually with a Muslim woman. We were talking about, I think it was actually during my visit to the mosque that I have in one of my previous videos where I say that I went to the mosque, and I don't remember all of the videos that I had, but it was at that same place, and I was talking with a woman and we were talking about head covering and all that kind of stuff, and I think it was just a mix between the conversation with her and seeing some of the apostolic women around who wear their hair up in buns and have the little lace pieces on top of the bun. There was something about it that sort of triggered this idea in me that I didn't necessarily have to fully cover in order to make that same commitment. I could sort of do a partial in my own personal sense of devotion. So about probably 2 years before I got married, I started with a commitment to wear my hair up at all times. So I stopped wearing my hair down. Then I followed it up with a commitment to wear like headbands and any kind of like a broad headband, or like those lacy, like the headbands that you put on them. It's kind of like broad at the top and then it goes thinner in the back. So I started wearing those, and I did that literally up until I got married, and then I got married and I covered all the time. So that's, basically my story on when I started covering. What or who influenced you to cover? Yeah, so I kind of mentioned it in the previous answer, that it was really something that came from just seeing so many different people, men and women, from different religions who cover as a sense of devotion. So there's not just the hijab, but there's also the kufi, there's not just the tichel, but there's also the yarmulke, or the kippah. There's Sikh men and women who wear the turban, just kind of turbans in general. I think there's a couple other different faiths where they wear turbans. There's apostolic women, there's Mennonite and Amish women who cover their hair as well. So yeah, it was just something that I kept seeing a lot of different people of faith doing, and it was something that I really felt a calling to. I really felt drawn to, because it was just something that sort of, it makes a statement, and it also holds you accountable to the people who, you know, like when I wear this, I'm representing not just myself, not just my own culture, but I'm also representing people of faith in general. You know, that people should be able to see a person who covers their head and know that that is a person who is devoted to, you know, to their faith and to you know, their interpretation of God. Can you explain the first time you started head covering? Did anyone help you in your journey? So yeah, I kind of explained head covering. Did anybody help me? Basically just the people in my community, in, you know, the Muslim community, in the Christian community. I think one of the other like really great sources of community was Wrapunzel with the W. It's so it started off as a blog by Andrea Grimberg, and then it turned into a marketplace for buying scarves and scarf accessories, and then it turned into a Facebook community of women who cover and sort of support group amongst them, and women who cover for various reasons. Sometimes it's religious, sometimes it's fashion, sometimes it's because of hair loss. So yeah, it's really a great place to be, and it really kind of made head covering super, super special. So that was basically my influence. How has it changed your life? Gosh, I used to color my hair literally every couple of months, and since covering, I have not colored my hair once, which really just saves me money. I do kind of miss hair coloring. I kind of miss the fun of it and having different funky hair and doing my hair and whatnot. But, you know, that's one of the reasons that I have started buying more wigs, and I've really gotten into trying to make like yarn wigs, because a yarn wig is so cool because it's obviously a wig, but it kind of has that illusion of hair, and you can do a lot of cool funky stuff with it. So I really like that. So I tried making one, and it was absolutely terrible, but I'm going to keep working on it when I get time, because I think that that's definitely a really great outlet. I don't know what else. It's I don't know, how has it changed my life? It's hard to say, because I started covering when I got married. My life was already changing in a lot of ways, and wanting to cover I started doing that when my life was changing in a lot of different ways too. So I don't know if hair covering changed my life, or if it's a reflection of changes in my life that were already happening. Yeah, it's just sort of, I guess maybe it's grounded me in my cultural identity and my faith a lot more, for sure. Like, I definitely feel like a lot more like, you know, everything I do is, you know, everything I do it as a Jew. Yeah. What does it mean to you? For me, the tichel is a connection to women all over the world. It's something that, you know, it feels like it's a sorority of women, and it feels like also kind of, I definitely do feel like a fraternity to, you know, men who wear head covering too. You know, I feel like I feel a connection to men who wear, you know, yarmulke. I feel a connection to men who even wear tzitzit, you know, which is the undergarment. And actually, so I have a friend who is a Mormon, and he wears the, like, underwear, and his wife wears the underwear too. And that was something one time that we were able to connect about. Like, he's a good friend. He kept making jokes about, like, if we had a daughter and he has a little baby boy, that, you know, we should have them marry. And I'm like, but they're not the same religion. Like, you know, I don't know. I don't want to say who knows what's going to happen in the future, but, you know, it's the 20th century. Who am I to say anything? But it was really just kind of funny. Like, I don't think our kids are going to get married. Sorry, brah. But he's a really good friend. And it was a really cool moment to be able to connect with him because I asked him, I said, you know, like, oh, you do wear the, like, underwear, like, what is that all about? And he told me the whole story about it and, like, what it represents and, you know, his whole speech basically. And he said, you guys have something similar, don't you? I was like, we do. We have the Tzittzit Katan, or the Tallit Katan, which has Tzittzit on the corners. These are all words that if you are not Jewish, you are not going to know what I'm talking about. So I will put links in the description because I don't really feel like going into too many details and derailing a bit. It was a cool moment, though. It was a cool moment to connect with him on that one. It was a cool moment to be able to connect with all of these apostolic women I would see, and, you know, Mennonite women I would see. And we were like, oh yeah, we both do that same thing. That's so cool, you know. Obviously, you know, Muslim women, it's something that we've always been able to connect with, just like hijab and tznius in general, like the concept of modest dress is something that, like, I've always been able to connect with Muslim women about, because we're always talking about, like, the struggle or modest fashion or whatever, and how, like, it's really exciting to see modest fashion kind of come around. I also have, like, mad props to Christian, like, websites, Christian shops, because they make a lot of, like, modest clothing that's really hard, like modest bathing suits. My modest bathing suit is actually from Israel, ironically enough, or, like, not ironically enough. But I've found lots of websites that are actually, like, I find out later that they're Christian websites that make modest bathing suits, or, like, wedding dresses. Like, the Mormons have probably supplied, like, 80% of Jewish women's wedding dresses in America. So, yeah, it's something that is definitely, what was even the question? What does it mean to you? Yeah, so, what does it mean to you? Yeah, so, yeah, it's definitely been something that is, like, it's a connection to people all over the world and people of faith. And you know, it's a connection to my own identity, to my own Jewish identity. It's a connection to my own culture, very strongly so. And it's a connection to, you know, my faith, you know, obviously. Like, it's a connection, like, I don't want to say, like, oh, it's a connection to God. It is a connection to God. But I feel like it's so much more than just a connection to God. That to say, like, it's my connection to God is, like, a very, like, minuscule kind of, it almost, I don't know. It's so much more than that. Like, it's so much more than just my connection to God. It's like a manifestation of my connection to God, if that makes sense. Who couldn't get a video done without the baby waking up. You're in a much better mood though. Look at that smile. How do you deal with rude comment stares you get because of head covering? I don't really get rude comments or stares from strangers. Probably the hardest has been relatively rude comments from my family. I don't want to necessarily say they were rude. I don't think that anybody's ever kind of been intentionally rude, but I've gotten comments from my family like, your hair's so pretty, why do you cover? I hate when you cover, it's so nice to see your hair. My grandmother, one time, I was wearing like a handkerchief, almost a snood. It was like a snood basically, and a little girl was staring at me. I don't know why the little girl was staring at me. I don't think she was staring at me because of how it looked. It looked very, like, you know, old-fashioned. I didn't really look Israeli or Jewish or anything. I was wearing a snood, you know. Yeah, exactly. And my grandmother goes, "Oh, she's staring at you because she thinks you're Muslim." I'm like, "No, she doesn't. It's Madison. She knows what a Muslim looks like. She probably goes to school with like 7, you know?" So it was just the weirdest thing, and my family's just kind of really weird about it. So how do I deal with it? I don't know, you know. I just try to be like, "Oh, well, it's not your decision, so I'm going to do what I like." I think the funniest thing is, like, when my family's kind of constantly like, "Oh, it's so great to see your hair." I don't cover in front of my family because I don't have to. So why would I? I don't have to cover in front of, like, I don't have to cover in front of my, I don't have to cover in front of, like, obviously any women. I don't have to cover in front of women in general. And then I don't have to cover, I think I don't have to cover in front of my uncles. And then I choose not to cover in front of my cousins because I know that, like, while both in, like, Judaism and in Islam and in a lot of different, you know, cultures, it's totally okay for cousins to get, my first cousins to marry. It's not something that's culturally the norm in American culture. So, you know, I just made the personal decision that I'm not going to care if I cover in front of my cousins and my boy cousins, and besides, my boy cousins are all, like, super, super young. They're all under 18. Oh, except for one, you know. So, you know, if we're going to Thanksgiving, I'll wear a hat, and then I'll take the hat off when we get there, and then everyone's, like, shocked, like, you know, we've never see your hair ever, and the reality is I don't generally cover in front of them, and for some reason they think it's, like, I don't know, it's because it's how they, it's because what they see in pictures, and then they, you know, wig out. What are you gonna do? It could be worse. So, you know, I just kind of ignore it. What can you do? What can you do? You know, I'm not going to try and change anybody's mind. I'm not going to try to make a big deal about it. I'm just going to kind of, it's how I deal with everything. It's how I deal with adversity and everything. I just kind of shrug and I'm like, too bad. It's not your choice. What are you going to do about it? You have no power here. So, I don't know. Just move on. What is your favorite thing about head covering? Not having to do my hair? Maybe... I think my favorite thing is, like, when you see somebody else who covers. Yeah. You want me to read that book? We'll read it in a minute. Yeah, I think when you see somebody else who covers, or you see somebody, you know, see an observant Jew or something, you know, somebody who you know, like, kind of know, you know, kind of gets it, and you kind of do that whole, like, yeah, I got you. I'm with you. See you, fam, you know. I think that's my favorite. The amount of, like, kiruv I've been able to do. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had a friend, like, send me a message on Facebook and be like, "I'm interested in hair covering. Like, can you, you know, answer some questions for me?" And it's just absolutely amazing to be able to be that kind of. What is your must-have accessory? The no-slip velvet headband. I will also link that in the description below because, oh my gosh, like, I had one, I misplaced it, and I was lost. Like, I just could not deal. So I bought 3, or replaced it with 3. I still haven't found the original. I think at the moment I have, like, 2. So I keep losing them. I don't know why. But, yeah, oh my god, I can't live without it. What advice would you give to a newbie in head covering? Yeah, I know, I get it. It's no touch, probably just to find a support group, a support network, be it a Facebook group, be it your, you know, synagogue or your mosque or church. Or even just, like, you know, a group of, like, 3 friends or something like that, you know. Because if you feel like you're just doing it for yourself, you're also going to feel like you can give up whenever you want. And honestly, like, maybe that's something too. Like, maybe you don't want to commit to it. Maybe it's something you just want to do periodically, and there's nothing wrong with that either. I think sometimes you just need to hear a voice outside of your own head. Yes, I get it. I know. You're very funny. You have an opinion on this?
I.
You don't cover yet. I have tried. I have tried to get you to wear a kippah, and you don't like them. You take them off all the time. I know. Luckily, you don't have to wear one until you're 3. And then we will try again. I think just kind of like hearing a voice outside of your own head, and knowing that it is your choice, and knowing that ultimately you will be supported by people will help you make the right choice for you. Because I think that there's a problem where, like, if you feel like you're not doing it right, you're more likely to give up. And that's not necessarily a good thing. You know, you should feel like, you know, the only right way to cover is your way to cover. It's the way that you want to cover. But I think it's also, it's also discouraging if you feel like you're doing it in a bubble, because even if you sit there and you're like, well, I want to do this for my purposes, you almost feel like somebody's going to sit there and be like, that's stupid, you know, or whatever. And so, yeah, you need your cheerleader. Like, you need your cheer group behind you, kind of saying, like, you go, girl, you got this. Yeah. Would you ever take it off? I don't think so. I've been wearing it for... Stop. No. Stop it. Stop. No. Stop. Stop. No. No touch. Oh, Mama's so mean. Your Mama's so mean. Yeah, I've been wearing it for a really long time, and I think if I were going to take it off, I would have taken it off already. And, you know, it's something that kind of becomes part of your identity. It's something that becomes part of your uniform, part of your wardrobe. And, yeah, it's something I like doing, so, you know.